I've had multiple friends reach out to me recently about wanting to get into Wizard 101 themselves, so I thought I would make a series of guides to help new players get into the game. The first thing you do is choose which school or class that you end up with. There are two ways to choose your school, taking the quiz or just choosing which one you want to do. Every time I take the quiz since 2011 when I started, I always get the Myth school, but what does that mean? There are 7 different schools, each with their own different identities and differing stats. Certain schools have higher damage and lower health, while other schools have a good mix of all trades. So let's break down the 7 different schools so you can understand the different play styles that each one has. There are 3 offensive schools in Wizard 101, those being Storm, Fire, and Myth. Storm is the glass cannon, where it has the highest damage output both from its spells and its gear, but it has the lowest amount of health and the lowest amount of resistance. That means you can hit very hard very quickly, but you also have a very high chance of dying, making it one of the hardest schools to solo. Storm has a lot of spells that give damage buffs and healing spells, and uses life as its secondary school. Fire is the next highest damage school. It has slightly higher health and resistance in exchange for lower damage than Storm. Its school identity is focused around damage over time spells, where when you cast a spell, it will do an initial hit of damage followed by leaving a damage over time, which will do a specified amount of damage every single round. Its secondary school is Myth. Here we are at the Myth school with my main character. Myth is the 3rd damage school, as it has the 3rd highest amount of damage, but since its damage is lower than Storm and Fire, it has higher health and higher resistance than both schools. Its school identity is focused more around minions than anything else, but minions are kind of useless. Myth also gets a lot of utility spells to remove shields and a large amount of pierce to go through shields and resistance. Myth's secondary school is Ice. Now in the middle of it all is the Death School. Death has a high amount of damage compared to the other schools that are not hitting schools, as well as having high resistance. Death's main identity focuses around drain spells, where it will do a certain amount of damage and then return some health. Death is probably the best school to solo with, due to the ability to damage and heal in the same round, especially once you get to the higher levels, where there are spells that will allow you to hit all enemies at the same time and return all your health basically back to full every single hit. Death also gets a lot of support spells such as buffing allies and weakening enemies. Death's secondary school is Storm. Next are the 3 support classes, Balance, Life, and Ice. Balance is a full support class, where you can have a very good amount of damage for the Balance school, and the spells will do a mid-range of damage, but you can also have high damage output for all 7 schools for certain spells that do damage of those other schools within the Balance school. It has a mid amount of resistance and very high health, and the main aspect of the Balance school is that it is fully support. So you can cast spells on your allies that will buff their damage no matter what school they are. If you are a fan of being a supporting character, this is the school for you. Next is Life, which is the healing class. Life has the lowest damage output except for Ice, and the highest health except for Ice. Its resistance is more in the middle compared to Balance, and focuses mainly on healing over damage output. Life obviously will have damage spells, but they are comparable in damage to Ice School. Healing, however, is where Life stands out. Even though you do a low amount of damage, you can always heal yourself when you get low and stay in fights for a very long time. This means that Life is a school that it is possible to solo with, it will just take a very long time. Life's secondary school is Fire. Lastly, the Ice school is the tank class. It has the lowest damage output of all 7 schools in exchange for the highest health and highest resistance. It is possible for an Ice Wizard to get 100% resistance to every school. Ice's support comes from its shield spells, where it can cast multiple different shield spells that will stack on each other. Ice is my 3rd highest wizard, and I find that it's possible to solo an Ice Wizard due to its tank ability, where you can take a lot of damage and set up for very hard hits. It just takes time. Ice's secondary school is Death. So when picking which school you want to go with, you should keep in mind which ones have the lowest or highest health, which ones have the lowest or highest resistance, and which ones have the lowest or highest damage. If you want to play with someone, Storm is a great school because they can support you while you set up for large hits. Fire is another great school if you have a partner due to its high damage and low defense, with Balance having less damage. Balance is still a great school if you want to be a support player. If you want to solo the game, Death is your best bet. Although it doesn't get an AoE spell for a long time, it just helps to be able to damage and heal in the same round, especially when you have a high amount of damage later on. Life and Ice are also good schools to solo on. They're weaker schools, but it means that you stay alive longer. So I hope if you plan to give Wizard101 a try, take the test, see which school that the game defines you as, and from there decide using this guide whether or not you think it will match your playing style. If you like this guide, please leave a like and subscribe for more in the future, and I'll see you in the next one.